up to him and giving respect, and all of a sudden people come along and start treating him like like less than a shmata. So the din is, says the Shulchan Aruch, lo yachlam oisam. He shouldn't cause them any shame. He shouldn't react in a way that to yell at them or to cause them any embarrassment for what they did, or to Ela yishtok. Rather, he should remain silent. The yira min melech malchei hamlachim shetzivo lekach, and he should just, Chara means to say, focus on yira shamayim. Focus in order to means to be mechazing himself, to get himself in order to sit there like the expression Chazal used, ke'evin she'en lo hofchim, like a stone, without which nobody's touching. Just sit there silently. Don't react. Don't say anything. Don't certainly don't scream at them or whatever it may be. And have fortify himself with Yiras Shamayim. This is the Ratzon HaBorei, Mora Ish Aviv Imo Tiro. Ish Imo Aviv Tiro. To have a Yira Mora for Avim. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says here in Sif Gimel, and it describes it as Ad Heichon Mora. Now, a little later, I don't think you have it on the page, but in Sif Ches. It's on the next slide. Sivches, the Mechaber asks, Ad heichon kibud avay. How far does kibud go? And there the Mechaber says, Afilu natlu kish shel zuhuvim shlo. Even if his parents grab his wallet full of gold coins, vishlicho b'fanav liam, and they throw it right in front of him, in front of his face. They throw it into the sea, where it's presumably non-retrievable. Lo yachlimim. He shouldn't degrade them, shouldn't embarrass them. V'lo yitzayir b'fneihem. He shouldn't show any tsar in front of them over what they've just done. He shouldn't show that he's aggravated or distressed or upset by what they just did. V'lo yichos kenegdam. And he shouldn't get angry in front of them. Eli yakabel gzeres hakasov v'yishtoik. He should be makabel, the Torah says, and remain silent. Now, so the question is, what's the difference here? Meaning, why does the Sif Gimel calls it Heichen Mora'am? How much is Yira Mora? And he gives the example of the man is sitting there with the chashav of clothing, and they start, spitting at him and ripping his clothing, etc. And in Sif Ches, what's Kavod? And in Kavod, they give the example of throwing his money into the sea. That he's also, it says also al yachlim osam. He shouldn't degrade them or embarrass them. So why is this called Yira and this called Kavod? And we could also ask, what exactly is the Chiddush? Meaning, Avada, this is a phenomenal madrega, but one might ask the question that it's pasha that you can't cause your parents tsar. One can't cause parents tsar, even if they did something that would, let's just call it, just saying they deserve it, so to speak, but can't do it. So what is exactly the chiddush of describing this case here, or of these cases? So I just want to go back one step then and discuss in general the difference or the overlap perhaps between kavod and mora. There is a shaila in the poskim about let's call it the interplay between kavod and mora, and Rav Yerucham Perlau has a bayer on the Sefer HaMitzvos, the Rav Sadia Gaon, and he says there, I've seen this quoted in Svarim such as the Sefer Oitzer Kibud Avim, the ha'over al mitzvahs asay the mora avim, who overgam al asay the kavod. One who's over the mitzvah say, it says ish imov aviv tiro, and he does something which negates that yira, which goes against mora avim. He's overgam al asay the kavod. To kol shu osa dvarim hamarim ladas shein yiras harav al panav. Anything that if a person acts in a way that shows that he doesn't have yira for his parents, that he reacts to what they do, or he does things in general to treat them like commoners or whatever, and not to show the proper attitude he's supposed to have to their mora in terms of not contradicting them, as we said, and not calling them by their name, things like that. One who doesn't act properly in that respect, and he violates those principles. So ein lecha, he says, ein lecha zilzul b'chodim yosim izeh. So that's a phenomenal zilzul of a covet of his parents. So memela, by not living up to the standards of mora, he's memela also, says Rabbi Yochanan, he's memela also in violation of the mitzvah of covet. Now, so he says, Umashe mivia hagamara ezehu mora ve'ezehu kibud. So you say, well, then, like, what's the Gemara said? This is mora, this is kibud. What's if it's all one? Because anytime you don't do mora, you're not doing kibud. So why are they separated into different categories or into different mitzvahs or to different tzivuyim in the Torah? So he says, Ein ze el lefarish hadvarim hanichnasim tacha shem kibud udvarim deshaych b'hem shem mora. I will call Sheyoshev a Makam Aviv, V'Soser Dvarav, Umachrio, all the things that we said that you're not allowed to do because of Mora. Lo Belvachu over Basei de Mora, over now Basei de Kibud. So, I guess what he's saying is the reason why you're over Kibud of the aim by violating these things is because Mora of the aim requires that you do this. In other words, if not for the mitzvah of Mora, you'd be allowed to sit in your father's chair. If the pasuk didn't say ish imov aviv tiro, so just covet alone. So maybe say covet alone wouldn't require you to not call your parents by their name, or certainly not call other people by your parents' name. It wouldn't require you to refrain from disagreeing with your father, or imachriya dvar. Covet wouldn't require that, but mora does. The person mora has awe for someone, doesn't contradict him, and doesn't even, machriya dvarav to say, oh yeah, he's right, and doesn't sit in his chair. That's mora demands that type of behavior. So Zak Rabbi Yochanan, but once now that's mora requires that. If you don't do it, so it's a zilzal in their covet. It wouldn't be be'etzav zilzal in their covet. It seems if there wasn't a mitzvah of yira. But now then the covet would just say what the shulchan is going to say later. Covet means you have to feed them, bring them food and drink, to help them with their getting dressed, to things like that, and help them travel places. That's what covet would be, like a positive acts of showing them respect in the sense that helping take care of their needs. That's all you have to do. But now that Mora says, now there's a mitzvah of Mora that you have to treat them with awe. So if you don't, so it's considered a zilzal in his covet. That's he learns the chayr. It's a chiddush, but that's how Rabbi Yochanan learns. However, he brings here in the Sefer. This is the Sefer Otzer Kibud of the Maharalmi Prague in the parish Gur Aryeh in the beginning of Parshas Kedoshim, where you have the mitzvah of the pasuk of Ish Imov V'Tro. He says different. He says Yesh Mora below kavod, v'Yesh kavod below Mora. Sometimes there'll be something that could be a violation of both. So he says, no, not to sit in your father's chair, your mother's place. That's mora below covet, like we said, mora below covet. Helping them with their clothing and their shoes and their food, etc. That's covet below mora. That's not as mora. That's covet. Be mechabed the person, show them that you're worth taking care of and looking after your needs. It's not mora, I'm not showing awe. It's like being mischase with them. That an honorable person. You want to help him with his needs, physical needs, whatever it may be. He says, if a father says, please prepare lunch for me, make me a pot of rice, whatever it may be, and he doesn't do it, this is Zak the Maharal Prague, then he's taka over both. He's being mavatal the mitzvah covered by not. His father wants him to help him with lunch, and he's not doing it. And not only his father wanted, but his father, was mitzvah him or requested he do it by neglecting or refusing to fulfill that request. that's a bit, that's he's mevatel the mitzvah of Mora too. So he says there they overlap, but not necessarily stam. If he doesn't help him with something where the father didn't ask him, or whatever, he just, he stays home. He knows his father could use help maybe, but he doesn't volunteer as an orphan, doesn't go do it. So he's just missing out on cover, but not Mora. But if his father actually asks him to do it, then he violates both. Then there's a third shita he brings here, which is the shita of Rabbi David Pardo, who the Shal Shuvas Michtam LeDavid. Pardo is one of the great Svarim Pesachim, has many svarim. But there's a Shal Shuvas Michtam LeDavid. He says that even more cooler that he would only be considered a violation of Mora if he explicitly rejects. His father says, "Help me with lunch," and says, "Sorry, I'm too busy," or he says, "No, I can't make. I got other stuff to do today." That would be then not only is it not covered, but it's also violation of Mora. But if he simply doesn't do it, he says that would not be even considered a violation of Mora. So you have three sheets. Rabbi Yochanan Parla says anytime. He says this. He says anytime he violates Mora, he's violating Kibud. So what would he say about the other way around? He also wouldn't say it the other way around, right? If the parent said to, or if the parent didn't say, he knows that his father or mother could use help. They need to get somewhere. They can use a ride, and he's capable of giving them a ride, but it's Sunday afternoon. I'd rather relax, since rather than giving his father a ride to wherever he wants to go. So by not doing that covet, he's not necessarily mevatel Mora. There's a lack of Mora, but the other way around, at any time he violates Mora, memela it's a zilzal is covered. Once that's how we learned, and then we saw the other two shittas. Okay, now there's also he has a discussion later in the Sefer in Sifra Katan Tafshin Yud Ches. There's a big shadow in the poskim, which I'm hopeful we'll get to later. What's the thing if a parent asks you to do something or tells you to do something which they have no personal hana? They want you to do this or don't do this. Don't do something. For example, don't do something. We're really not negating them at all. It's not something they say. I don't want you to wear whatever it is, a black suit. Oh, you're a black suit. Get yourself another color suit. It doesn't. It's not a bizayon to the parents if he wears a black suit. Then, rather, if it's a bizayon, then of course you have to listen. But it's not bizayon. It's just, I don't know why you wear a black suit. Get another color. So, is a child mechuyev to listen to that or not? It doesn't really affect the parent in any way. So that's a whole nidin in poskim. There are poskim lekan or lekan, but the shaila that he's discussing within that context, he brings the following. He brings for the Sefer HaMakna and Kedushin that says as follows: Nira the kol davar shemitzavelo aviv, af bedavar she'ein lo aviv shemana mimenu, she'ein b'chal kibud. His father tells him to do something, and he doesn't do it. So his father, let's say he's not even living at home. He's a married person or whatever, or he has and his father visits his house and says, you have to keep your keep your room a little neater, whatever it is. And even though say it's not even the father's house, but he tells us that it's not a case of a bizayon. It's not something. The father doesn't like whatever. Maybe his father, his mother are very meticulous, overly meticulous in neatness, and they're in the son's house, and they tell the son, don't those things you have find a place for them, put them away in cabinets somewhere. They shouldn't be out on the counter. And it's perfectly normal. Everybody, many people have that in the house. Maybe the clean dishes that were washed, and they're draining on the drain board. So, don't leave them there. Dry them and put them away in the cabinet. That type of thing, which it doesn't affect the father in any way. So says the Hafla, but if you don't listen, afilu hachi im ein leben shem hefsid mimenu. If by not, as long as it's not something that the son is, has a hefsid by listening. So is zebachal mora shem lo yishmelo havikus soseris devarav. This is the good. Shem lo yishmelo havikus soseris devarav. Soseris devarav is not just if he says. Tells him no, or he disagrees, or like the father says, I don't think it's nice that you have a wooden floor here. You need to get a carpet. get a carpet for your floor. Wood floors aren't nice. I never liked them. And the son feels differently. He happens to think it's very nice. He has nicely polished and this and that. And so he said, but if he does listen, okay, maybe you can get into, well, it costs money, the carpet, whatever. Maybe the father says, I'll pay for it. Just order the carpet, put it on my carpet. Make sure you take care of it before So it's not going to cost the son a penny. The father's willing to pay for it. So if he doesn't do it, says the Hafla, it's Kesoisus Dvarav, which is a very big chiddush. But that's what he says.
Is there an Indian of Lifnei Ivra for the father? It seems like that would be a major problem.
So there are dinim like that. There's a din Mefurish Ben Shulchan Aruch about a father or a parent not hitting their child once they reach a certain age, where there's a concern that the child might hit back. So yes, it's definitely is such a shaila, and in fact that's something we'll get back to. We should talk about the case of the Shulchan Aruch, where the person is sitting in a chashuvas place and his parents come and start spitting at him and hitting over the head and ripping his clothing. So hey, what's going on here? Isn't that aren't they doing Yisurim? And isn't that Lifnei Ivra? Because they're sort of tempting the average person to react in a way that he's not allowed to. So, yeah, that is true. But that notwithstanding doesn't mean. But he did it. The father did it already, and he already said, order yourself a carpet, order a carpet for your house. I don't like the wood floors, and he already did that. So now, it's obviously not all. I don't mean necessarily to be medayik from these examples, because example like that you have to get. Well, what happens if it's his wife's the one who likes the wood floors, and she's very much not interested in carpet? Carpet? Are you kidding? Carpet, first of all, it's hard to keep clean, and whatever. I think this wood stands, these floors is beautiful. So then already we get into other issues. I mean, the Mac himself used the lashon im ein lebein shem hefsid mimenu. If there's no hefsid by not listening. A case like that, if his wife doesn't want carpet, it could be a big hefset by not listening. So I don't mean to be medactic on these examples, but I mean the point is that the concept that he says that's called sosus devarov. Then and he brings afterwards others that say not like that. Okay, but I'm just trying to show that there could be a real overlap between kavod and yira, and and things like that. Here, I'll just read from this other, the other side of the coin. He quotes again the Shal Shuvas Michtam LeDavid that we quoted before. De'ein nikra over al mitzvahs moira el ha'osa maisa o medaber dibur she nikra miyad mitoch oso maisa o dibur she osa bezoyin la'aviv. But and sosus dvar means he says mefurish, I'm not going to do it. Otherwise he says that's not considered like a moira. And he brings also from Rabbi in Dibros Moshe that who quotes this makna that we just mentioned, that anytime a person doesn't listen it's memela sosus dvar. So he says etzem adimyan to lo yister dvar lo nachon klal. Says in the true, if the son would say, I'm not listening, okay, then maybe alva ba'ofin she'eina ben or klum of el she'eino samash amalalasas ein ze in listiras dvarim b'shosh medarim the ikrek peda b'dibur shemedaber elav shlo b'derech kavod. Okay, in any case, so now getting back here. So now we started with the question that the Shulchan Aruch says in Sif Gimel that Mora, the extent that Mora goes is that even if a person is sitting in a very honorable spot, and his parents come along and start totally degrading him, spitting at him, hitting him on the head, ripping his clothing, he's not allowed to show any he's not allowed to be machlim. He's not allowed to show that he's upset with them or yell at them or insult them or anything else. He just has to be makabel it. And then there's a halacha later that says kavod, that if they take his money and throw it into the river, he's not allowed to show that that it bothers him. He's not allowed to act that he's upset by it or be machlim them. Now, by the way, he is allowed to take him to Beis Din, it says, especially because we paskin that it's another discussion for later. But we paskin that kibud av aim is mishel av, meaning the child doesn't have to have to bear the expense of Kibud Avim if the parent can afford to. Even he has to be Chabad his father, but like his father wants food, so he has to bring him food, but the father has to pay for it if the father has the money. So here too, with the father, it's not like you have to sacrifice your money for your parents. Your parents want to take your money and throw it into the river, or they want to burn down your house. That you have to, you're allowed. You don't have to lose the money. You're allowed to take it to the basement. But but you can't show that you're upset, by it, and etc. So the question is, why is this called Morah? This is called Kavod?
At least run away, make sure that they don't take your money.
Okay, so let's address that now. So, in the second sif by the Kavod case, the Ramah says, like you just says, V'yesh Omrim Dimrod Sid L'Zrok Ma'os Shel Ben Liam. If you see that the father wants Yachal Lamano, you could try to stop him. Da'enu Chayav L'Chabdo Rak Mishalav. And when they explain, even though you could theoretically take him to basement, but who says he's going to basement ready? Who knows what's going to happen? Knows you'll get the money back, and etc. etc. Yes. So yes, the Ramah says at least b'shem Yeshomrim, and this is the way the Aruch HaShulchan brings down Lalacha. Yes, you're allowed to stop them, and the Aruch HaShulchan says b'meilo it's the same thing back by us in Sif Gimel. Sif Gimel, we're talking about the guy who's sitting in front of the tzibur in a seat of honor, and his parents come and they start doing. He says what the Shulchan Aruch is talking about. They did it already. They did it already. So then. You can't say boo. You can't be show them any upset or whatever. But if you could stop them in the first place in a way that doesn't cause them bezayim, you're allowed to. For example, he says if you know that you suspect they want to come and do this or whatever it may be, or you see them coming, you're allowed to ask somebody else to try to don't let them in. I saw one as far he gives an example. Let's say a parent tells his son that. I'm coming to your. I'm coming to. He knows that I'm coming to your place of work, and I'm gonna tell you off in front of all your friends. I want your friends to see what kind of guy you really are. I'm going to tell you. So if your father his father forewarned him, so he's allowed to ask the doorman or whatever if he comes. Come up with an excuse, but don't let him in, or or something like that. You're allowed to do that in a way that it's not. You're not doing anything directly, and it's not a hachlama. So yes, the Aruch HaShulchan says before you're allowed to do that. Okay, so then you might ask a question. So then, I touched on before. So then, what's the chiddush? So if the Shulchan Aruch is only talking about it happened already, that the father already hit him on the head and spit in his face and whatever. So it says you can't insult them, you can't embarrass them. Why is that a chiddush? I mean, what are you going to gain unless? Maybe you'll gain. They won't do it again. But why would it? What's the haba mean? It should be mutter in this case. So the number of the Svarim, including the Sefer, let's give it a they answer based on a chinuch. According to Sefer Dvar Moshe, maybe says his teretz. Apparently says his teretz that the chinuch says, what happens if a different person comes over to you, not your parents, stranger or not a stranger, someone you know, but not someone you have to be mechabit specifically like a parent. And he comes over and he starts doing, denigrating things and insulting things and etc. etc. So the chinuch says that in chirfu also, if somebody was insulted, somebody insulted him and it was mavazim, and he wasn't able to hold back, and he gave it back to him. He responded in kind. The guy started screaming at him or insulted him. So he answered back with similar words. Afal pi she'ein ze midas chasidus avaleka aver biyado. He didn't do an aver by a regular person. It's not an aver. A person isn't necessarily expected to be able to just stand by idly when he's being humiliated by some, especially if it's not justified in any way. So that's the chiddush here, that by a parent you don't have that heter, even though it's tremendously difficult to do it, and by another person you're allowed to do it, even though you're not saving yourself from the humiliation necessarily. It happened already, but it's natural human reaction that if somebody humiliates and to respond. So therefore it's not usher to do that. It's not an aver to do that. Kamash Milan, by a parent it is. It's an aver to do that, even though the motivation or the feelings or the the temptation to do it might be just as great. But by a parent, the person has to be mechazik himself, and not what happens. So I mean, these are extreme cases. But if you think about it, like there are many cases it happens with a parent where children or whether children who are young children, older children, or adult children, something get into disagreements with the parents, or they're upset by something a parent did or said or wants or asks, or not just the parents want them to help even they're whatever it may be. Maybe the parent criticizes them about something and they get very upset about it, and it's much easier cases than this. Than they're sitting in front of the head of a very hush of a meeting, and they get spit at and beaten on the head. Much less drastic, much less extreme, but still, where there's just tempted, and the parent might be doing something which the parent is much more justified in doing. Maybe the parent is criticizing the child because they feel the child needs some guidance in this matter, or whatever it is, or so you just have to think kal v'chomer, how much more you have to not respond and not show that you're upset, not cause them any humiliation or insult or aggravation. It's not easy. We said that Kibud Aveim is chamur shebechamuros. It's the most difficult amongst the difficult mitzvahs to do. Abaye said, right? I think Abaye, who lost his parents at a young age, said, "Ashrei mi shelo chaman." Fortunate is the one who never saw his parents, because he doesn't run into all these all potential situations of being violating an issa deraisa. And they even talk about that. So some posts can talk about that one has to make a real shikol if he should when he's living on his own, especially when he's married and living on his own. How close should he live to his parents? Should he live near his parents? Should he not live near his parents? Now, on the one hand, live near his parents, you have the opportunity to be Kibud Aveim and help them out with things, especially if they get older, they need help, and you have an opportunity to do that. And just by visiting them, and especially as your family grows, and they get the nachas of the kids and everything, and it's a tremendous nachas. But on the other hand, if they're too close, sometimes it's going to increase the nisyonos. Because the parent there, we all know, probably all have heard stories with parents that aren't completely considerate of the children's needs. And I'm talking about adult children; they're not so considerate necessarily, or maybe because their needs are getting so great that their own needs, that it sort of makes it difficult for them to make a balanced decision about what to ask, what not to ask. And they make requests of the children, and the children have a difficult time fulfilling them or filling them, and it creates nisyonos which wouldn't be there if they weren't living there. So it's a shikol a person has to decide based on various factors in the relationship, and it's a gavaldige thing if parents and parents could live together under one roof or right next to each other in a way, and it's Mishalom V'Shalva, and they run into these things. It's gavaldig. It's wonderful that to be able to be in the proximity of the parents for all the reasons I mentioned before, but it's something to think about, and about if that goof is causing unnecessary nisyonos, and being over with the children, mamish being over yisurim, possibly over yisurim chamurim on frequently. Okay, so now so getting back to the question now that we didn't quite answer yet, so why is this called cover, this called yira? Okay.
I apologize. Rabbi Friedman may have addressed this, but do the same dinim apply for in-laws?
I didn't address it, and the answer is the same dinim, no. There are dinim, but not the same, and hopefully we'll get to that. There are dinim of kibud for grandparents, older siblings, or at least the oldest brother, possibly sister. But they're different levels. There's no other person. Well, leave out Ava Aim. No one else. Leave out covered Rabbi. Maybe in terms of relatives, there's no other person where the chiyuv is on the same madrega as the parent. Yeah, I'm saying no other relatives. So Rabbi, there are a lot of things we'll see. Hopefully, maybe we'll get to discuss that also. Okay, now. So in terms of the question, why here it's called yira and not called kavod. So Rabbi Yerucham Perlo answers this question. Just want to get it inside here. Yeah. He says like this. Sarich Lomar, the Sfir Leila Rambam V'Hasmag, the Lo Shayich Kan Kovid Klal. In the case of the child whose parents is being mevaze him publicly and spitting at him and hitting him on the head when he's sitting in front of a whole tzibur of people, it's not Shayich Kavod, Bishim De'ein Kavod Elu Laha Mechubad. Kavod is only a person who's mechubad himself. That means he acts with a certain, at least basic level of decency and culture. Let's just say, cheshbon behavior. That's where shayach kavod. But dahainu l'misha noe kavod ba'atzmo. Aval lo yo'eh l'ksil kavod. For a ksil, a fool, a person that's there's no. It's not shayach kavod to be. It's not shayach kavod to a person who's completely what's the word, bereft, or completely apart and separate from any kavod in his own hanhaga. Memela, parents that do that wouldn't be called kavod. Parents who act like that to a child, it's not kavod. Mora, you still have to. That's why the Shulchan Aruch calls it ezu morab. You have to show mora of it, but it wouldn't fall. They wouldn't be a chiv kavod under those circumstances. Whereas, I guess according to what he's saying, but the case where they threw his money in the river, it's not quite the same. I mean, it could be a bit upsetting, but it's not quite the same as they're not humiliating him. They're just doing something against him, which would aggravate the average person. The average person would, if it wasn't his parent, he certainly would snap out at the person. So they're still in a covet. Here, where the people are acting like this, this is based on a mice in the Gemara. Some learn that I think I'd say by this case that the parents we're talking about parents who were insane, which would seem so from this behavior that they were insane. But the Indian Gemara still applies. That's how he answers it. Then the Richard Perlow answers it. Then there's some other terutzim given to this kasha. Well, he brings a teretz from the Shal Shuvas Binyan Av that says that the reason why it's called Mor and Sif Gimel is because it's telling us lo rak sheyishtak el leyira dahainu shashtika chayeves yaz mitoch mora v'lo rak mitoch hechrich. It's not even enough to bite your lip, and keep quiet. But he's saying you have to do mitoch mora, mitoch like mechavin. I'm being mekayim yiras aveim. I'm not responding because I have to have awe for my parents. And if you're in awe of someone, or you don't criticize him in any way, or you don't embarrass him or humiliate him in any way, so it's phenomenal madrega there. Okay, so I want to point out a couple other things on this halacha. First of all, there's something we touched on before. The Marshal says. That the case where they're ripping clothing and whatever else is got to be speaking where they had some toelis in it. They were doing it either to rebuke their son for something he did or whatever. Even if it's warped, even if they're wrong, but they had a cheshbon. They had a cheshbon of what they were doing. Because if they had no cheshbon, so then they're mamash rishayim. A father does that to his son. First, he's over baltashkis. He's just, in both cases, they're throwing his money away, throwing his clothing, and he's hitting him. He's insinuating him, like was mentioned before, right, to strike out at him, etc. So, if there was no reason in the world, no explanation for the person who's doing it, says the Marshal, then the person would be a rasha, and there's no mitzvah of Kibud Omeira by a rasha. Now, I will mention that itself is a shaila, which we will address, hopefully. It's later in Sif Yud Ches in the Shulchan Aruch, where the Mechaber says that even if afilu haya aviv rasha o malaveros mechabdo umisyaro bimeno, you have to show covet and yira, even for a parent that's a balaveros or a rasha. And the Ramah says no. V'yeshomrim the einu mechuyev l'chabed of rasha elam came as a tshuva. So it's a machlokes mechaber Ramah there. As a shal in the poskim, do we pass? Is there Ramah says Yeshomer, but he doesn't end off the Chayno again or whatever. So the question is he absolutely arguing or not? But the shal in the poskim had a paskin there, but the Marshal seems to be pasking like this Ramah. And I say the case here has got to be that they had some cheshbon for what they're doing, even if the cheshbon was wrong. But at least they had a cheshbon, so they're not a Russia. It could be they didn't make the proper shikol, but they're not a Russia. There's a mitzvah to be mechaber them.
Not stable.
Sorry.
They're not mentally stable. They go to
Right, so then they're not a Russia. Like the case I mentioned, like some learn over there in that Gemara.
So then you have to.
Yeah, then they're not Risham. You'd have to be mechaber them. I mean, the Gemara talks about in cases like that whether you should what the proper if they're not mentally stable in a way that they're constantly making the most difficult requests of the child or things like that, then there might be an Indian to figure out how to avoid all these situations. But there would be a mitzvah. Yeah. Just a second. Now, just to just give a few more examples, or this idea of not. It says you can't cause them tsar. We saw you can't show them. It's a chesed. You can't show them. You're aggravated. You can't cause them tsar. So the post can talk about different things. Here, we mentioned before something which is in nogay of the parent, but let's say do a certain behavior of the child would cause the parent sorrow. For example, fasting, not on one of the fast days that you're mechuyev to fast. The child wants to fast for various reasons in terms of for kaparas haverius or whatever it is. He wants to fast certain times when it's not required al pidin, and the parents it causes the parents tsar that he does such a thing. Because their child and he's not eating, they think it's not good for him, and they're worried about him. So he brings here from the Knesset Agdola, the Yalkut Lois, that he should not do it. He should not fast when it's not one of the obligatory fast days. And then he writes like this. He brings from the Shuvas Rav Chaim Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, Salmas Chaim, Misha Aviv Mefersim B'Chasidus. The father is a very pious individual. He's known to be a very big Yerei Shamayim. So Roy lo lehizar shlo lahakel v'lezalzel b'mitzvus af b'safik d'Rabbanan shemut b'dina. The child has to be extra careful not to be lenient, even in matters that maker that might be mutter, but in a way that it's mezalzel. His zilzel b'mitzvus nigrem is bushel of him hamafursim chasidus. Katzir Amar na ri'u gidulim shegidalta. In other words, if it's a situation where they see the son acting in such a way, and it's pasnish for this person's child to act that way, and it's like a bad reflection on the parent that here he is, on that madrega, and he can't, and his son acts in a way that's very much not in keeping with that. He shows like a lack. Even if not doing anything usher, but a lack of proper reverence that you would expect for a product of that home, of that parent. So he said that would be nichlal in this thing of causing the parent busha that a person has to be nisr from. He says, just one more example here. Let's say a person knows certain things that if the parents hear, that if they hear people talking about certain things that are nogay of the parents, which maybe certain chesronos or whatever it may be, personal things, which if they hear people talking about, will cause them busha, or cause them tsar. So then there's a mitzvah to make sure they don't hear it, make sure they conceal it. Because the idea is any the Shulchan Aruch gave extreme cases, but we have to make sure to lower it down to our level into situations where anything that we know that could cause a person harm, that cause a parent, cause a parent tsar of any form, busha, upset, insult, anything that form. not to do, and to try to avoid, to try to see that it doesn't get back to them, even from others, and particularly, like I said before, not doing things that would be mitzara them in any way, or not displaying any tsar or any form of aggravation or displeasure by something the parents do. Okay, these are things to think about. Let's say they're madregas, but they're basic chiyuvim. They mean madregas, and the person is not able to fulfill it properly, but certainly things that we have to strive for. I never know how to bring the screen back on this to shut it off. So. What is that? It's the colors. There's nothing no further to get it from here. Okay.
I'm just thinking that besides all these extreme examples, my parents are long gone, but I'm concerned about that I shouldn't cause my children or my grandchildren to be open. And I'm thinking, even asking a simple thing, it could be a problem with neighbor.
If they look for something that they
don't want to do it, depending on what age they are also,
Right, it's true. Yeah. So something to think about. On the other hand, there is an that should be covered parents and grandparents.
Yeah, on one hand, so you're getting an opportunity to become close. On the other hand,
right. So I think part of it. We spoke the other day about what's coming up later. I think it's the value for parents to always be mochel, even if it's not to tell them, but at least we know they ask them. Like the mochel is probably going to do it on a regular basis. So that's embarrassing.
Is this Rabbi, right?
Huh?
Is this a tripod?
It's a
Camera.
It's a camera. You want a cookie and a soda?
Is this yours?
Yeah. I mean, it's in, you can have bring those two Gemaras. All right, Aaron, thank you for your patience tonight.
Don't worry about it, Rabbi. It all started with my fault.
These are Netflix, right?
Nah. What's your favorite chocolate?
Chocolate. What do you mean by that?
Hello?
It's very vague.
Yeah.
It's very vague, gosh.
Who yeah. He did not respond. I called and texted, he didn't respond. What, reach out to her? Tonight is 45 days, which are, 6 weeks.
6 weeks and 3 days.
I didn't hear Mazonis.
I said it though.
Okay.
Or someone said it louder. It's recording?
Yep.
Really?
Everything you say can and will be held against you in the court of law.
So why do you know Miranda rights? Have you ever been arrested before?
Never. There's a matzav in that store is no good.
What massive? Bounty?
And of course, it doesn't take much for the world to turn against Israel.
Who's turning right against Israel right now?
Everybody.
What do you mean everyone?
Europeans.
What are where are the Europeans saying against Israel?
They should calm down. They should stop fighting.
Israel didn't fight.
Tell to the Europeans.
If Gaza has a right to bomb us, clearly, we should have the right to bomb them, no?
No, we're Jews. Doesn't
No.
work that way.
We protect our own, right?
They don't let Jews do anything.
What?
They don't let Jews do anything.
Okay.
What bothers me is that these same Jews, they so admire the Western culture, and the Western culture throws them down. So it's very funny to me.
You just said that on the camera. Okay. I still
Okay.
think though that they have some random act to bomb our country. We should be able to bomb their country.
Yeah, but since we're Jews, it doesn't work that way.
Why not?
Because nobody likes Jews.
Who cares what everyone else likes? Want another 6-day war where Egypt has no air force for about 10 years? Let's do it again.
Unfortunately, Israel is not in charge. The Europeans and the Americans are in charge.
No, Hashem is in charge.
That's true.
Chaim.
That's actually true. Okay. Let's see. Let's learn. You ready?
I feel like the ministers of Eretz Yisrael should make a Gorla Hakra about what they should do.
Resign.
Ouch. And it says quit. It says like the word means quit in English.
Leave. They don't know what they're doing, unfortunately. They have no clue what they're doing. Zero. With a capital Z.
Sorry. After all they're just giving the viewers a little like
Is that Halachos?
Let's see what it looks like to compare. After decades, why can't the Israeli put together a government?
Because they're a bunch of Risham.
Not necessarily. We'll call them that. Why are you calling them that? They're Yidden.
So they're wicked Jews. What's it called?
What do you mean? You said they're wicked Jews. What did they do?
I said they're wicked Jews.
What did they do to be so wicked?
They fight the Torah.
They don't fight the Torah.
They fight the Haredim.
Charedim aren't necessarily Torah. Charedim are weird. Charedim are pseudo.
We are Charedim.
We're not Charedim.
So what are we?
We're Yidden. Charedim are very, what do you call it?
If you lived in Eretz Yisrael, you'd be called Charedi. I'm just telling you.
I know, that's why I don't live in Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Charedim are very anti-patriotic.
Are you anti-patriotic?
No.
So what?
I'm
Why do you
saying,
think
I'm
Charedim
saying,
are?
I'm saying, wherever you live, you have to have a curse of touch to your country.
Why?
Hashem put you there.
What if you live in
It's like,
Germany?
it's like you're staying at a nice hotel.
Like,
It's very temporary. Planning on getting
so
out.
Auschwitz also, you have to have a curse of
We
that.
said Auschwitz was a nice hotel. Auschwitz is a hotel where they steal all your stuff throw you out the back door. We said we have to have a curse of touch for the Germans. Look what we're doing in America, Baruch Hashem. Obviously, the Geula is where we long and yearn to be.
So
But
who
right
said
now,
the Charedim don't have a curse of touch?
Israel was fighting the government.
Fighting the government.
Yeah.
Like how?
I don't know. They're very against everything the government does, from what I hear.
You're in the wrong spots listening. Okay, let's go.